Hello, everybody. It is 4:59 p.m. Central Time on the 12th of March, 2021, Friday night. Here in the United States, it's already Saturday internationally. I hope you're doing well. Of course, we are here to talk about seismic events. Yet, once again, we do this on a semi or almost daily basis at this point. Just turned on a display capture so you can see what I see a little bit better here, but I've got an update for you. We have some developments that have happened today. And again, for my new viewers, the earthquakes that are raised high off the globe here are deep down into the earth. We watch for these deep earthquakes because they have a shallower, larger earthquake effect that spreads out and away from the deep quakes. In the past day and a half, we had a deep 6, or now deep 5.9. Here right below our letter D, which is so hard to see because there's so many new deep earthquakes down below this location. Start of the week, we had a big earthquake down here, an 8.1, 7.3, 7.4, three different large quakes actually, but the big one was the 8. The other two 7s struck next to the 8 and down south next to New Zealand. And when we look at the spot that's been hit in the past 24 hours, Kaikoura, just north of it, was struck by a 4.7 and 4.4. Take those, add them together, it equals 4.84. So almost a 5, about an upper 4, right in the middle of the plate boundary. Then another 4.4 around the same time, same day. 4.4 struck down in South New Zealand. We have an equal spacing going along the plate boundary. And let me show you the plate boundary map. We're going to be looking at this throughout the rest of the update. See the red lines here and how they start right at this pinnacle tip, like a triangular shape. That's where all of our deep earthquakes are. So going back to the deep earthquake look, where they're all raised high off the globe, we have a leveraging action that's coming in on the underside of the plate there. Then it spreads out and away. And that spread is taking place across New Zealand on the last day of the warning, which technically expired last night at midnight my time. So we're 12 hours beyond when these earthquakes struck. Check New Zealand off the list. It's within the magnitude of the expected. We were looking for up to upper 5 to come in next to Wellington. Let me show you where Wellington is. So I'm a magnitude off again. We're 1 magnitude off across the board around the entire planet. 1 magnitude off. And right there. Now throughout the week, up here to the north, we got 6s, not 7s, right? So if I'm 1 magnitude off to the north, 1 magnitude off to the south, that's where we're starting here. Going back to the USGS plate boundary map, here it is. It's all still going. It's going as far south as New Zealand's south tip, and it's going as far west all the way over into Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. Aussies. Aussies. We're going to start the update off great. Let me get a sip of my coffee. Yes, I'm drinking coffee in the evening. But Aussies, guys, get your prawns off the bobby. You got a 4.4 coming in right at the tip of the arrow out in the middle of the plate boundary. Ooh, piping hot. Okay, so energy coming in from the northwest finally on the last day of the update, or the last day of the warning. So in my update 7 days ago, when we talked about Australia and getting to it to the end of the week, here we are on the last day. And the middle of the plate started to move mid-range 4. Well, isn't that weird because that's the same size that went down through New Zealand, right? 4.4, 4.4, and a 4.4. So the Indo-Australian plate is finally starting to move down to the south and at the center. Let me show you the plate boundary here. Whoops. Here we are. So here's the plate boundary again, and we are right in the middle of it, going down to the south and in the center. You can also see where the spread is going up to Philippines, over across Papua New Guinea to the north, and it's a huge cluster of 5s. Let's get all the 4s out of there really quick. Oh, 1 second, guys. A little sneeze coming. Or maybe not. Okay. Well, that's the way it goes. All right, we're live. So look at the 5s, and again, we're looking at everything 4.9 and greater. So we have 5.1, 5.1 over here on the eastern side. That's on Solomon Islands going into Papua New Guinea. Then 5.4 and 5.2. Then 5.1 and another 5.1. Now, in between these two 5.1s on the other side, we got a 4.9. You could also say that this 5.1 here is nestled between this 5.1 and this 5.4 and 5.2. The halfway points are being filled in, and I think at this point it's appropriate for me to show you the standing waves. The deep earthquakes, what I think is going on with the deep quakes is this. Down out of the magma coming up into the underside of the plate, a series of concentric waves forming in on each other that then forms a singularity or a spike, and it hammers in, again, out of the magma up into the underside of the plate. And you can imagine just hundreds, if not thousands of miles focusing in down below and coming up. But then when that hammering action takes place, we get a spread of standing waves. And the standing waves take the same size, shape, and amplitude. And I think this is like watching the earthquakes pop off across a vast distance. And we get the same sized quakes, just like we get the same sized waves pumped into a standing wave tank, but it's spreading out across thousands of miles. So getting back to it, look. Again, imagine these, the peaks of each wave going across Mother Nature's tank, and then the middle points are going to be where the force combines, and we see a new break take place. So each middle point is filled in as the wave spreads. As this wave spreads across the tank, its peak will fill in the middle of the trough next to it. Watch, the middle points get filled in as the wave moves across. I can just even park my mouse over there, and you'll see it. Middle, peak, same over and over again as the wave spreads through the tank in the laboratory. But in this case, we're dealing with Mother Nature's uneven tank, but it's somewhat of an even distribution, wouldn't you say? Now we take it down to 4s, and you're going to see the 4s are filling in the middle points between the 5s. So they're like the troughs of the waves. It could either be the bottom or the top where the big earthquakes are happening. Of the wave, I mean. Now we have another set of deep earthquakes, one on our letter D up here, which also stands for deep earthquakes, of course, and we have another letter D right here, which is almost impossible to see because of all the spread of activity, but right there as well. So new deep earthquakes spreading up on the underside of the plate, spreading out over into Indonesia and up into Philippines, which has just been filled in over and over again in the last day. So it's pretty obvious where it's transferring from, down to here, down to South New Zealand, and where it's transferring from, over to here, out over to Philippines. It's now starting to spread up towards Japan, which Japan, these earthquakes are from yesterday. Let's get those out of there. Look, here's what struck today. Here's what's going to strike tomorrow, and over to the west. Now I'll get over to Europe in a second, but the cluster is clearly around the area on the center part of the north side of the Indo-Australian plate. Here's India, here's Australia, Indo-Australia, north side of it. It's also moving down to the southeast side, so you could even say that this whole thing is now moving. And we expect that to happen after the 8.1 8 days ago, or 7.5 days ago. What else is going on? Let's go over and check the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center. People telling me to check that earlier. I didn't get a chance to, so let's go down the list. Dukono in Indonesia. Ecuador has Reventador going. Sinabung is back with a 12,000-foot high blast. That's over in western Sumatra, Indonesia. Suwanizajima in South Japan. Fuego, Sabancaya, Pacaya. Suwanizajima again. Pacaya, Reventador. I'm just looking for big blasts or any new volcanoes on the list. Okay, Mount Sinabung. Fuego. I did miss San Cristobal the other day, so I have to go pretty slow. I want to make sure I'm not missing any of these. Etna in Italy. No new ash emissions. Discrete eruptions at Sinabung again, up to flight level 120. Oh boy, anything else? Let's just keep going down the list. Pacaya again. Semeru 140, 14,000. And people probably telling me to check because of Mount Sinabung maybe. Oh wait, Mount Katovar is now back. Oh wow. That was the volcano that hadn't erupted in 1,000 years. I'll show you where that is. Katovar, 5,000 foot. Veniaminov going in Alaska still. Bagana going again in Papua New Guinea. Okay, there is. Okay, we've got to go look at this because Bagana, let me explain. Right here, right where the arrow tip is, that's where Katovar volcano is. And a couple years ago, we issued a warning for an upper 7 to near 8.0 earthquake to strike right here. We waited throughout the week, and I want to say like 5 days in on the warning. All of a sudden, this volcano that hadn't erupted in 1,000 years suddenly blew. And it's literally right in the middle of where we had warned for the large earthquake. When it blew, the media actually put out reports on it. Because again, I mean, it was a 1,000-year-old volcano that hadn't erupted in 1,000 years. The first unexpected, quote unquote, it was in quotes in the mainstream media articles, the first unexpected eruption of 2018 or whatever has happened at Mount Kadavar. And I'm like, the first unexpected eruption? What are you talking about? Like, so anyway, now we have a new eruption there. Right next to it, over to here, I believe that's where Bagana volcano is, but I have to go type it in to find out. Bagana, Papua New Guinea. Believe it's over in eastern Papua New Guinea. But the only way to know is to look it up. There it is. Bagana. Yep, it's over east in the Solomon Islands, eastern Papua New Guinea, right here. So that's an eruption there, plus a bunch of new earthquake activity right in the middle of it. That's a new increase. Now we go over to the west, and we have Mount Sinabung right over here, where we have our other new 4.0 earthquake. Mount Sinabung is where the letter V is on the northwest tip of Toba supervolcano right there. Going up to the north, we go up into Japan, where Suwanisejima and Sakurajima are both erupting in South Japan, Kyushu, and we jump all the way up here, going up into the Alaska Peninsula for Veniaminoff volcano. That's everything from north to western Pacific. So that's an increase, seismically speaking, and at least with the volcanoes, new volcanoes, showing up on the list. As we go up into Japan, yesterday's activity marked in pink here. Let me get it back on the screen. There it is. So it's gone quiet across just thousands of miles from Taiwan. Oh, one other thing I'd like to point out. The equal distribution going across both sides of the plate boundary from Taiwan over to Guam and the Izu Ridge. Let's go back over and look at the USGS map. Here we are. You see it, the plate boundary on both sides. It's the equal distribution again across both sides, about the same sized earthquakes. We should see this everything from down here, come up and pool into Japan. We should also see it go over to the west and break into Indonesia and then into Asia. So we don't have anything to talk about in Japan at all, but I do have something to talk about out here in Asia. Multiple new 4.0 range earthquakes struck. All three angles on our arrow, like a giant arrow from Mother Nature, no less. 4.3 and 4.2, these struck first, then the 4.5. You see how it's making almost like an arrow pointing to the west, right? Now guess what? If we take this 4.3 plus this 4.2, we get 4.35. Or I'm sorry, 4.45. 4.45. Well, we can just round that up. It equals 4.5. And it's at the front spearhead of this, going out to the west, and it's right around Lake Baikal. Our warned area was here in Siberia. Yes, I issued a warning in the middle of nowhere. I even cracked some Russian jokes. Нет. Yes, меня зовут Special Agent Dutch Sint reporting for duty. I'm going to sip my coffee. Ah, yes. Меня зовут Mikhail Yanich. Хорошо. Put on my Russian hat and go for a little... Okay, anyway, let's go over to the west. Check it out. A spread of the same-sized earthquakes, equally spread. Now remember what I told you about the standing wave tank. This happens across the world this way. So the standing waves spread out across the entire planet, and they follow the plate boundaries and the craton edges. The plate boundaries I've been showing you already throughout this update. The red lines, the fractures between the plates. But once we get into the middle of a plate, the energy follows the interior portion of the plate, which is the path of least resistance through the mountains in this case, where the fractures all exist. Once we get down into Iran, central north Iran has been hit, as well as western Iran at the Turkey border, and eastern Afghanistan, right at the Pakistan border, right in the middle of the arrow. But it's making a nice crescent arc shape there through the Middle East, with the biggest earthquake in the middle. Let me go show it to you on good old Google Earth. You can actually see this in the mountain topography itself. So we don't even need the USGS plate boundary map. But here's Iran as a point of reference right here at the center of the screen. Afghanistan, Pakistan. Just remember that. And we're going to turn off everything. Turn off all the volcanoes, all the lines and everything. Now we're just looking at the topography. Again, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan. But look at the entire Himalayan range, actually. But if you look at the edge of it, down here right next to Nepal, going into India, you see how it makes a bend and then goes over into Afghanistan and Pakistan? Once it gets there, like a flowing river, it breaks and goes around this central portion of the craton or the plate. And down to the south, it looks like flowing river. Now, the plate boundary goes along through here to the south. The USGS has that on their map. One more time in Iran, look at the USGS map. It's pretty obvious, right? We're looking right there in South Iran. It's the red line. But why don't they have anything on the north side? Well, look on the north side. They'd say there's no plate boundary there. Well, I'd say the plate has fractured in both directions and is bending and flowing like molasses over a long period of time, and the center portion here is what's blocking it. Now, it means it's flowing like a river, and if we flow down around to the bottom, or the south, and we go around to the top, or the north, and then we go over to the west, they recombine. So we get earthquakes that break out over here that are about the same size as put into the system over here. And it flows in two directions around the outside edge of the craton, in this case, in Iran. And our new earthquake broke out on the north side, even though the plate boundary's on the south side. But the biggest one in the middle, 4.7. Again, biggest one in the middle. The combined force between them. The amplitude. Now, once we get over to Europe, we have a wall where things break apart. Let me show it to you. First of all, a 5.7 earthquake struck, as well as a 4-point-something earthquake struck. And we're talking two different locations, two different times, just a few hours apart. The more recent happening within the past hour, a near 5.0 earthquake, 21:17, 2 hours. In the last 2 hours, a new 5 basically broke out in Albania. Okay, so Albania was warned. We had warned Croatia to Albania, and we are 1 magnitude off exactly. I had warned for a 5.7 and 4.7 has come rolling in. They have it listed as Macedonia. We will put the coordinates in and show you how close we are to the proximities of the areas that we issued the warning from. I'd say this is on the south side of it, though. So if you're in Croatia, guys, I think this is it. So a magnitude under, and we'll see how far off. Let me turn our borders and labels back on. Here we are. There's Albania, there's Macedonia, and here's technically the warned area going all the way down to the border of Albania. So I want to measure. Got to measure it. Got to know how far off I was. If I warn Croatia, we'll warn right from in central Croatia, down to here. We are 300 miles off. So, yeah, I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles. That's my goal. But if it's 300, I won't count it out fully yet. But this other earthquake down to the south, the bigger one, 5.7 exactly. They downgraded it to 5.6. You can see it here on the screen. Click on it. There it is, USGS 5.6. Well, we had warned for 5.7. Now we get a 4.7 and a 5.7 within a couple hundred miles of each other and 300 miles off the warned arrow tip. So that's it. That's definitely a smack in the middle of Central South Europe hit. But we're again on the last day of the warning. It expired last night at midnight. Then all this happens. It's like the third location where all this has happened in the last day and our warning expired last night at midnight. Whatever. There it is. So let's retrace this all the way back. Here's our 5.6, and that too came from several days ago when energy was coming out of the Mideast and out of the Gulf of Aden. Going back to the start of the week, you got to remember, we had energy that came across, went up to the Gulf of Aden, and came in through Crete. That happened this past week. Now here we are, and the new earthquakes have struck, and I mean quite literally Montenegro right at the border of Albania. Just hit in the last 2 hours. Iceland, the number of earthquakes has started to go down. Number of earthquakes started to go down. Again, did it erupt? Did it erupt and I just don't know about it? Again, I'm asking that facetiously, jokingly, because it's not... What I don't know. I don't know what to make. I told you guys that I wait for them on this eruption stuff. I don't talk about eruptions at Iceland hardly ever anymore because we see it happen over and over again. Where a big push comes out of South Europe, like the 7s that just happened in South Europe over the past few weeks, or, well, 6.9, whatever. 6.9s that happened, then all of a sudden, we start to see major activity break out at Iceland, seismically speaking, but no big eruption. So the real question is there going to be effusive eruption or is there going to be a blast? If there's just some lava flow that happens there, that would be considered an eruption too, but it wouldn't be catastrophic. Like it would be more like Bardarbunga volcano when it erupted and put out its big lava flows that were impressive, but it was just impressive looking. It didn't have any major effect, not like the big blasts that can of course cause air traffic trouble for Europe. Jumping over into Central America and South America, same-sized activity but a magnitude less, or a same-sized activity that went down into New Zealand exactly, but a magnitude less than we were expecting. Came in right at the Guatemala border. Guatemala's got the eruptions going right here at Pacaya Volcano and Fuego, and the magnitudes we're dealing with 4.6 right now. Down to the south, big open silent zone in South America. I would expect this middle point to get filled in pretty soon. It was filled in a few days ago. Down to the south, we have eruptions going on down here at Sabancaya Volcano, where the letter V is. No new eruptions down in Chile at all, but make note of the magnitudes. Down to the south, 4.7. How many is that now, where we have about the same size spread going out across huge, vast distances down to South New Zealand, 4.6 to 4.7, 4.4. Over to South America, 4.2 and a 4.7 and a 4.5. Going up to the north, we have a 4.0 and a 4.6 and a 4.8. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a spread, but it's all, again, one magnitude under. Oh, even Aussies. Even my Australian mates. Got it. Hey, speaking of getting it, look at this. Letter X. South Sandwich Islands. All the arrows point to it, and it's the same size that came rolling in a few days ago in the 5 range. And let's go down and look at the USGS map one more time. Red line map, this time south of South America. We told you to watch down here after energy was coming in from up here. And it came in, transferred underneath, and went just as expected down to the South Sandwich Islands. But that too can be all traced back to over here where, remember what we were dealing with? Again, you got to remember what we were dealing with going over this way. It was all 5.1s, right? Look, 5.1, 5.1, 5.1. And we jump over here and lo and behold, 5.1 and a 5.2. United States, Alaska, and Hawaii. Okay, let's get into Alaska real quick. Again, the middle of the Aleutian Island chain was warned for this past week for potential large earthquake activity. I'll consider that actually a strike, or do we? Because in between these 4s and this cluster of 3s, right down here in the middle on the peninsula, Veniaminoff suddenly erupted. Suddenly. There was no warnings put out. We didn't see any mainstream news talk about it. But then suddenly, Veniaminoff, boom, right on the peninsula of Alaska. Let's get a sip of my coffee. So, is that an earthquake forecast hit? I forecast earthquakes, not volcanic blasts. But I've said it in the past, if a new volcano or a volcano that's not normally on the list suddenly blows in an area where we're looking for a large earthquake, I will consider that a partial earthquake forecast hit. So it's like looking for a big rainstorm to produce hail and tornadoes, and it just produces hail. You still got your severe weather, but it wasn't the full severe that you're expecting. Now, does that mean that it's stayed off, that it's gone forever? I don't know. I don't have many previous examples to go on this. With 8s, it's every few years. And with new volcanic blasts, that might be every few months. So here, at new volcanoes, I mean. So here we are, and that's the middle of the open silent zone where the blast took place. Just as a heads up. But again, we can trace this like a stepping stone path through a garden. where the stepping stones are almost evenly spaced across a winding path, we go back down here, and it really is. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that it's like a stepping stone path, but that stepping stone path is more like the standing wave going through the tank. And the more you push one end or the other, the more you compress these, you sandwich them together, you push it together really quick, it pumps more energy into the system. And the waves absorb that, or the system absorbs that, and the waves get bigger or more powerful. And that's what's happening here, going across the the entire North Pacific. I was going to just say the north part of Japan and Kamchatka and Alaska, but it's the entire North Pacific that way, from Japan all the way over into North America. And that's what's going on right here. Now, getting into Hawaii, man. Well, okay, first of all, again, aloha, everyone. I know you're chilling out over there, and I don't blame you, but how about a new 4-point-something earthquake right in the middle of the hot mess of seismic that's going around in Mauna Loa, down to the Middle East Rift Zone, and all the way out into the ocean at Lo'ihi, the undersea volcano. But all that activity previously up at Mauna Loa, we got to talk about this. A new 4, where? Let's put the coordinates in. Come along with me on a voyage of discovery. And what are we going to discover? Well, first of all, these are all lava flows. And these lava flows go right back up here to Kilauea crater. Kilauea crater collapsed last year, and it remained somewhat silent for a full year. And then, a few months ago, it blew. You see, in the last flyover they did, it had water down inside of there. That was a sulfuric type of water that was boiling. It was way above boiling point. Well, that all blew away. And it filled up with lava. And it's still filling now. There's a live stream called Doing Hawaii over on YouTube. Go check him out. This guy's awesome. He's driven all the way around the area at the previous lava flows. And then he runs a live stream covering the goings on at Kilauea. It's called Doing Hawaii. And I don't know who he is. He just seems like a nice guy. And he definitely is covering it in depth. So go check out his live stream. But it's still filled with lava on the inside. Now we get a new 4 right on the side of Kilauea. But wait, this 4 over here is on the edge of the Middle East Rift Zone, which, if we look sideways on a sideways profile of the island, we'll be able to see where this really is. Oh yeah, let me turn the terrain on so we can get some elevation on this. There we go. So here's Kilauea. The new 4 is all the way over here where this little place mark is. Now, really, the magma chamber for the Middle East Rift Zone goes over and butts up against the magma chamber for Mauna Loa. I don't know how far apart they're spaced, but I don't think they're spaced very far apart at all. So really, this new 4 is where the two meet. It's where the magma chamber for the Middle East Rift Zone extends out over to. And just my guess, I don't have the magma chamber measurements, but I'd venture a good darn guess that there's a seam or a barrier or a small stretch of earth between Kilauea's magma chamber and the magma chamber for Mauna Loa. And that's where this is happening. Now, what else is going on the back side of Mauna Loa up here? It keeps swarming with earthquakes now. So it's gone on and on and on. It hasn't stopped. We can go over and take a look at it right now. Again, we're looking at the past few days worth of quakes. You can see where they are. Do you also see something here? It's almost like a starfish pattern around the outside edge of, well, the whole big island of Hawaii. Do you see that? Or a ring? You could just play a game of connect the dots and go around the outside edge of the whole middle to southern portion of the big island where there's a big ring around this, right? And the 4.2 is kind of right at the center of it all, wouldn't you say? So the 4.2 at the center of it all, right in between the Middle East Rift Zone and Mauna Loa, a ring of earthquakes all the way around the big island, and a big cluster right down on the side of it. And that big cluster is down at Pahala, which is right where, let me show you, the Middle East Rift Zone meets the other volcano on the south side, right down here. There's Pahala at the shoreline, and the earthquakes are all happening right in here, and here's Lo'ihi out in the ocean. So where Lo'ihi meets the Middle East Rift Zone, and where the Middle East Rift Zone meets into Mauna Loa, that's where we have our major activity going on. Meaning, the Middle East Rift Zone is causing the activity over here and over here, as this thing's reinflating still. And a new earthquake in between them means it's recharging again now. and it's pushing over to Mauna Loa and all the way around. It's blocked, I think. At this point, I would say it's blocked. It looks like it's blocked. What would you think if half the island is surrounded by all the same-sized earthquakes within a half magnitude of each other, and then centered in the middle are two big clusters, and in the middle of those two big clusters, again, let me show you, this cluster at Mauna Loa and this cluster down in the ocean, that four is sandwiched right in the middle between those. That's the biggest of the bunch. Wouldn't that mean the top of it's starting to flex? The top of the magma chamber, not the surface. So is there going to be some kind of give that happens here? Or is there going to be something else that happens behind it, up behind it, here? Will it give up here where all the breaking's happening and all the little small earthquakes are fracturing around the top side of Mauna Loa? I don't have answers on that. I don't think anybody has answers on that. But the seismic on this is worth watching. I said last time I wasn't going to trust the tilt meters and sulfur dioxide meters. Man, this is the stupidest thing ever. I can't believe I did this. A few months ago, the day before Hawaii blew, I was talking about Hawaii in particular because of all the seismic that was going on there. This is just, again, a couple months ago when it blew. So the day before, I'm analyzing the seismic, and then I say something like this. I'm like, well, we'll know if there's going to be any kind of eruption because the tilt meters and sulfur dioxide levels on the USGS, they will tell us if something goes on. So while there's seismic going on here, I wouldn't think there's going to be an eruption, well, because they would tell us. So if we want to know, we'll get it from them, basically is what I was saying. I was like, oh my God, listening back to myself, I can't believe I said to trust the professionals. And what happened? Not a single tilt meter reporting came out that said anything was weird was going on. Not a single weird sulfur dioxide reading level that went out. And then, boom, it blew the next day. And I said, at that point, I'm never going to trust the tilt meters and sulfur again. I'm going to rely on the seismic and use my gut intuition on something that nobody has anything to really forecast on. And here we are. I'm using my gut intuition to tell me that with a big earthquake at the center, a ring around the other locations, and within the ring, at the center of the ring, that's where we would watch. At that sandwich point between the sandwich points. Or another way to look at it is the standing wave that's spreading out across the tank focuses in on Hawaii, and we get a microcosm of standing waves that go right up into the magma chambers and spread out through them. That could also be happening through the magma itself, which could explain why we're getting an equal distribution and a ring hammering in on the underside of Hawaii. All right, it's just a hypothesis. It's not even. It's just a guess. That the ring underneath Hawaii, that's just a guess. It could also just be that all the magma chambers are reinflating. But why would the magma chambers all suddenly reinflate? Oh, I don't know. We had a new 8 and a big old spread going around the entire planet right now, and a few new volcanoes popping off on the list. Lower 48 United States. Here we are. You know, we always get to the U.S. last, and it frustrates a lot of people who are new, but I have to get to the U.S. last. We are the last to receive the seismic energy. As I've explained in this update, it starts over here with that hammering action I've shown you like 3 times in the video. This hammering action, the standing wave coming in, the concentric standing wave coming in from the underside of the plate. But then it spreads out and away, and then that gets us into the United States, because if it's spreading out and away from the West Pacific, it has to go all the way up, over, around, and back down into the United States. And that's exactly what we see happen on a weekly basis. Energy starts over here, goes up, over, around, and into the United States. But we're the last to get it. Because the other direction it goes, the first direction it goes, is out and away, right? Out and away is straight across over into Europe, and out and away is straight across over into South America. And you can see which way the arrows point, and the arrows indicate where the activity is expected. There's one spot missing, and that got hit 2 days ago. So there's an open spot here in Colombia that should be filled in next. You can see it. It's like begging for an earthquake in the middle here. That's just one example. But the same thing goes for the United States. It comes in from the northwest, and it follows in down into the Juan de Fuca fracture zone here on the west coast of the United States, where we finally got an earthquake reported out here. It's like amazing. Something happened. I don't know. Oh, wait. The Europeans reported it. Oh, wait. USGS doesn't have it? Hold on. They do have it from a day ago. Thank God. Okay. Thought I was going to get a little paranoid. They removed it. They actually reported a 3 off the coast. You would think that they just You would think there was no earthquakes that happen on the coast of Washington at all. And that's just not the case. They seldom report the earthquakes to the public. They're on a feed somewhere, they're on back end somewhere. They don't report them, usually, unless somebody says something. You would think that there's just no earthquakes out there, and that's the incorrect assumption. But a new 3 has been reported out in the ocean right off the coast of the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State and Vancouver Island. Also, new activity going across the Strait of Juan de Fuca, which is the little body of water here north of the Olympic Peninsula. And then, of course, noteworthy clusters of earthquakes breaking out down along the coast of Washington, and a noteworthy line of earthquakes going across Montana down into Yellowstone, where we're starting to swarm in Yellowstone now. And these are actual earthquakes. These aren't the little tremors that happen as a result of the magma shifting. Those number in the hundreds every day. No, these are actual earthquakes, little breaks in the plate above the magma chamber. Same with over in Idaho, that these are tied to the magma chamber for Yellowstone as well, which goes right below this location, by the way. So the magma chamber for Yellowstone starts at the surface. I say this in every update because people just didn't know this. When I first came around in 2011, people called me a conspiracy theorist for saying that the earthquakes that were happening in Idaho were tied to Yellowstone. And they said, Yellowstone's over in Wyoming. And I said, yeah, I know. That's where the surface of the magma chamber comes up. But the magma chamber must extend all the way down below Idaho. You know what they told me? Well, you need to prove that. That's not proven. You know what they did? 2013, 2014, they came out here with VLF and did earth-penetrating tomography and measured the magma chamber for Yellowstone, and they put out a new 3D model of the magma chamber. Guess what they found? The magma chamber goes down below central Idaho, and its feeder goes all the way below Oregon. So we were right. And right above it, of course, that's where all these earthquakes are taking place, and that's where the guy who went hiking with his dogs normally would go into a normal temperate spring of some kind, not hot, but temperate spring with the dogs. And they went out there and the thing was boiling. They didn't know it. The dogs didn't know it. They jumped in. He went in. It was bad news what happened. But that's the spot where all these earthquakes are. So where should we start with looking these up? I mean, we already know about Yellowstone, right? I mean, we know Yellowstone's at the Wyoming border with Montana. But do you know what else is at the border with Montana? Look at the edge of the craton and compare it to the earthquakes on the map. This is just the last 2 days, 2.5 days worth of small earthquakes. It makes a diagonal line following the craton edge right down into Yellowstone. And lo and behold, Yellowstone is right on the edge of the craton too, isn't it? The orangish, rusty, brownish color versus the purple up next to Idaho. So supervolcanoes apparently form at the seams between deformed and formed cratons. How about that? And I give you other examples as we go on to show you that that's not the only spot where that takes place, at the seam of a craton. Over to the west, Washington. Let's get the last 24 hours worth of earthquakes on here. This is going to reduce the number of earthquakes on the screen and just show us what's happened in the last day. We need to see what's happened in the last day so we can see the areas which have increased versus the areas that have dropped off. Like I said, the areas that have increased over at Yellowstone, for instance, on the edge of the craton. The areas that have decreased, number of earthquakes-wise, well, for instance, look at Washington and Oregon from yesterday to today. Yesterday you had a bunch of earthquakes. Today you have one. Let's go look it up, see what it is. Woodland, Washington, at 16-kilometer depth. That's right off the edge of the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, no earthquakes down across Oregon, nothing. So Washington, Oregon, Vancouver Island, no earthquakes. But a line of earthquakes on the edge of the craton. It's like energy's transferring out of there, isn't it? But let's go look at the tremors. Remember what I just told you about Yellowstone and their tremors not really being earthquakes? Yellowstone has the magma. It moves around down below. It causes little vibrations that get picked up on the seismometer, seismographs. And long story short, those are not earthquakes. They're tremors. But earthquakes are cracks in the plate, actual breaks in a fault. So when we look at this, we're looking at the tremor map from the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. There's 327 different tremors today, last night, yesterday, the 11th, and you see where they are centered. One cluster is up in Vancouver Island. 3 clusters are down at the Oregon-California border region going down into the valley. There's 327 of them. 327 different vibrations as the plate is shifting, but they're not really breaks in the plate. They're movement throughout the plate from down below. So the southern arm of the Juan de Fuca fracture zone points in like an arrow to the spots that are shifting on the southern arm of it. So on land, we are mimicking the Juan de Fuca fracture zone out in the ocean down below. This is pushing up and into the plate. So when I see these little tremors on land, again over here, 327 of them, they correspond to what's going on out here in the ocean. And we have a warning going right here in the middle. Let me show you where we have our warning going. We have a warning going at a place called Eureka, California. Here is Eureka, California. And all of a sudden, this takes place right next to Eureka, California. A slow slip begins. 327 of them. Now you'll notice there's no earthquakes reported all across Northern California, Oregon, while the plate is shifting, vibrating. The plate is shifting, vibrating here. And over next to it, we start to move. And guess what? Down to the south of it, we started to move. The number of earthquakes has started to increase down in California. For instance, an example. Geysers. The geysers, Cobb, Anderson, California. The geysers, the name speaks for itself. It's Clear Lake volcano, volcanic field. It's where they pump human sewage into the ground to steam it off, to get the water to turn electric turbines. They take your sewage from your house, put the nasties in the ground, inject it in, steam it off. But why is it steaming? The volcanic field here that they drilled into to get it, to get the heat. That's where they pump in the poo. Clean green energy. Turbines. They're turning the turbines which provide power. Okay, that's the volcano though. The number of earthquakes has started to go up down in California. And that's true across the board. The Bay Area now has 3, all in the same spot, parallel to, right along in the ocean, but parallel to Mount Diablo, down to the south. Again, this is the Bay Area. Mount Diablo's right here. The earthquakes are right parallel to it on the fault parallel. Over to the east, by northeast we go, into Nevada, and we have a 1.8, but it's out here at a spot we haven't been to in a long time. Lovelock. This should bring us in next to Soda Buttes, I believe. Soda Lakes, maybe. Going on memory, and we haven't been here in months. Soda Lakes or Soda Buttes? There's Lone Mountain in Lovelock. Okay, Soda Lakes is down south. Okay, again, I haven't been here in months, if not a year. Lone Mountain Volcanic Butte. Look how old this thing is. Yeah, Lone Mountain. This thing's older than Lord of the Rings. Look at it. So it's massive. What do we have right here? Now that's really interesting. Okay, we have an ancient volcano that formed at a point when this was all underwater. And this all used to be an ancient inland ocean, by the way. So that's really interesting, a new earthquake next to that ancient volcano. It doesn't mean that's going to erupt. It means that it's a weak point in the plate that Mother Nature made a long time ago. Here, let's zoom in on it again. A long time ago, Mother Nature punched up through the plate. And right next to this, here, created a weak point. Lava flows, whatever, long time ago. Now, here we are, and it's just a weak point in the plate that when Mother Nature sends this wave across the tank, when the standing wave starts to spread across the plate, seeks out the weak points, just like a vibration going to a crack in a piece of stone. As opposed to just going right through the stone, it'll seek out the weak point in the crack in the stone and further that crack. 1.1 over here at the California side of the border, and we'll just put this in. Sorry, guys, I almost just sneezed into the microphone. Blow out everybody's ASMR eardrums. Achoo! Wake up, class! The disadvantages to being live. Okay, here we are. So, we are in California in the Sierras, but look at this. Do you see? Here we have Lake Tahoe, and here we have Pyramid Lake. I have been showing everybody this for years at this point, but I want to show you now. Again, the giant oval shape. Oh wait, hold on. We have a hot spot in the middle of the oval shape in a subdivision at somebody's house. Now, a 5-acre fire next to my house over in the field there didn't even show up on the satellite. 5 acres. I looked for it all day. Waited and waited and waited for the satellite to detect this big, huge fire. They had fire engines over there. It was a control burn that got out of control. And 5 acres or more burning all at once. And it didn't show up on the satellite at all here at my house. So here we are. We got a hot spot there. And it's right there in the middle on the side of the giant oval shape, nestled between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. Now you'll notice the giant oval shape is lined with its own volcanoes. It gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge. I've talked about this before as well. The hot spots also develop around the outside edge and in the middle. And then on both sides, we have, look, take a look at this. Okay, so we have the needles at Pyramid Lake right here. The needles are geothermal fields, fumaroles. And on the south side, same distance away on the south side, we have Steamboat Springs, which they built subdivisions on one side and they've harnessed the geothermal from down below on the other. And they've drilled in to get that steam. So if you hear bumps in the night here at Steamboat Springs, it's not poltergeist. It's the volcano geist. And the seismic that accompanies that picks up when the plate starts to shift. We start shifting up here, all of a sudden down here, things start to pick up. We're not let down. We get down to the California-Nevada border, and we have a new swarm that's broken out right at the border. Now, what would you do if I told you this balance point, this swarm that's broken out between these other two clusters? On one side, we've got a supervolcano. On the other side, we've got a volcanic field that broke apart. And in the middle, what's in the middle? Mono Lake, Tom's Place, a huge volcanic field, basin, and rising lava dome. We'll show it to you. California border. It's beautiful. Absolutely fabulous. Look at this place. Mono Lake. I've been calling it Mono Lake for the longest time, but apparently it's Mono. And there it is. It's the rising Pahoa Island out at the center of it. And it blew at some point in the past, and at some point in the future it'll blow again. Now, here's the supervolcano I was talking about, Long Valley Caldera. It's 1,000 cubic kilometers of melt down below. And it, too, is lined with volcanoes, and it gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge. And it's just a few small ones there right now. The new breakout has happened right there at the border. And like I said, over to the east, we have Monte Cristo Hills volcanic buttes that broke apart last year with a 6.5 earthquake. And subsequent activity breaking out here now. Now, as for California, just like everywhere else across the board, I'm waiting till the last day. Today is the last day, last night at midnight. And we're giving it one day beyond. The plate is shifting. The slow slip is certainly interfering with the flow as I would normally expect it. But going around the California-Nevada border, I'm not seeing anything different. Everything that we would expect to happen is taking place, just on a smaller level right now. So geysers started to swarm. The California-Nevada border started to swarm with the new outbreak going to Mono Lake. And going down to the south, the number of earthquakes has started to increase. The magnitudes behind it, not so much so. We don't have any new swarm locations or anything. But the number of earthquakes is starting to go up just a little bit. So if there was a slow beat of a drum before, the snare drum has started to pick up here. But it's not a full-blown jam yet. The spot where we're moving here back at Ridgecrest, I can just pull the most recent earthquake that just struck in the past few minutes here, actually. But we'll put the coordinates in, show all the new people what's out at Ridgecrest. First of all, it's an experimental facility for all sorts of big companies doing all kinds of military tests and all that good stuff. But it's also a rocket test range. And what is this place? What do we got going on out here? Cattle? Cattle farming. We're doing cattle ranching out there. Oh, wait. Hey, hold on. We got a lone hotspot out there in the middle of the desert right next to where the earthquake is. Right in the middle of the Lava Mountains volcanic field. In the middle of nowhere. Back in the back country where you're not even going to really be because of all the military testing. And there's no way there's going to be somebody out there. A 5-acre fire next to my house did not show up. It'd have to be bigger than that. And wow. Okay, so how many is that now? We've got like 3 or 4 locations where you have an earthquake and a hotspot right next to it. And it's not like there's hotspots all over the place. There are only a few clusters. Look where the other cluster is. Out here in the desert, where there's absolutely nothing. Over here, same thing. Oh, we got a microwave tower. Yeah, it sure is. Okay, well, again, hotspots out in the middle of nowhere next to where the earthquakes are. Please, something's going on there. Going over to the east, we have 2 lone sets of quakes over at the nuclear test sites. Boom! But here, let's go pull the coordinates up at the surface. We have surface earthquake at the nuke test site. Uh-oh. Some kind of collapse, maybe. Maybe it's a collapse of an inner chamber of something as the plate's being compressed. The nuke sites start to compress and collapse more. You know, they do create underground cavities sometimes when they blast that stuff out. Looks like this is the remnant of an ancient volcanic butte of some kind. Unnamed. There's not even a name on it. Wait. Did I say something about the nukes, right? How about Area 51? This is Area 51 right here. The famous Groom Lake facility with its double-long runways through. Groom Lake there, and well, yeah, no biggie. There's the Range 61 volcanic buttes. We're right on the edge of Area 51, but Area 51 is on the edge of the nuke sites. And there's all the nuke sites. And every one of these is an underground nuke test location where, again, humans have come in and blown the hell out of this place. U.S. nuke Operation Paliza, October 1st, 1981. 150 kilotons. Man, I was, 6 years old at that point. I was 6 years old at that point. That explains what's wrong with me. So the other earthquake is just on the other side of the nuke test sites to the south. Right in the middle is Doomtown, Operation Rise Line, where they recreated the scene in the Indiana Jones movie. And he got in the refrigerator. Okay. Anyway, we have earthquakes out there. Now, before we get into Southern California, we have to recap everything, so you can understand really what's getting ready to happen, what's going on. First of all, we have not seen our 5.0 activity out in the ocean. And because of that, we have not seen a push come in. We see the plate is shifting now. That usually results in a break somewhere around where the plate is shifting. So it might be just taking a couple days longer. On my forecast, I issue them for 7 days. And if we get to day 8, I still watch, but I consider it an earthquake forecast miss for me. I'm telling you, we're still watching for the next couple days. The plate's still shifting. Most likely it's just taking a couple days longer than normal. Either way, I'll be back on to discuss either how I got it wrong or if it really just was a day late. Either way, it's a miss in my book for keeping track. Trying to get it down to a week's kind of hard, guys. Okay, now, I'll get it. Hey, don't fault me. I'm a one-man operation. Doing something that everybody said was impossible, by the way. Mind you. Man, this is such good coffee. Great Escape Coffee Company, guys. I don't get anything for recommending them. Great Escape Coffee. They used to make the Dutch Synth blend, but I just keep buying from them because it's so good. They ship it here from Tennessee. It's so good. Anyway, recapping. Are you ready? Line of earthquakes coming out of the northwest following the edge of the craton going down into Yellowstone. Stack of earthquakes above the magma chamber for Yellowstone. A lack of earthquakes over here along the coast while the tremors all of a sudden start to pick up. 300 of them yesterday. So the plate's vibrating and shifting here. It's moving on the craton edge over here. And it's moving down through California, going down along the coast to the Bay Area, jumping over, across, and down to the supervolcano, Mono Lake, and Monte Cristo Hills. Pushing down to the nuke test sites, going down to Ridgecrest, and we have hot spots showing up next to several of these locations. Once we get down into Southern California, we have a quarry blast out here, I believe. Here, hold on. Yep, quarry blast out there. Is this a quarry blast too, or is this an earthquake? Well, they're about the same size. Nope, it's another earthquake. Okay, and another quarry blast. So 2 quarry blasts, 3 quarry blasts. We don't even have to look up any of them. They're just blowing everything up down there. All along the Garlock Fault. Now, you know what's so weird to me about that? First of all, hold on. You know what's weird about the Garlock Fault? Look at all of the faults across California, even the plate boundary. That's the San Andreas, the thick red line. Make sure you guys can see all this. And along the California-Nevada border. They're all kind of going the same direction for the most part, northwest to southeast. You see that? Once they get all the way down here, there's one big line that goes across. That's the Garlock Fault. Now wait. That's where the earthquakes are. Now what's down here at the Garlock Fault meeting into the San Andreas? Again, Garlock, San Andreas. Boom, boom, boom. Right through here? Huh. I wonder why they would do that. Let's go see what's there. We had fires there before, but what's right through here? Do you see anything there? Let's zoom in a little closer. You start to see these little pads, but they're not pumps or jacks or drill points. It's all electrical generation. All wind farms. But you get right over here, you've got big old solar panel farm. Huge, look how many there are. Just massive. But where are they blowing stuff up? Well, they got a couple quarries out here, right here and here, but look where the quarry is. The quarry is nestled into a wind farm. Now, explosions next to wind farms, earthquakes, explosions, electrical generation. Where have I heard that before? Along the coast, we have two sets of quakes. One on the creeping section of the San Andreas, one further down south, north of San Luis Obispo. Now this little cluster, this is low. Creeping section is gone creeping quiet. It's creeping me out. The creeping section's creeping me out, man. It's gone quiet. This whole thing we would expect to be in the 5 range is currently in the 1 and 2, maybe even up to 3, maybe off the coast, but so low while the plate is shifting. And that's concerning me because the lower we go for the longer period of time, the bigger it's going to be when it comes up. Another way to look at it is the whole planet is going into overdrive. 8s, 7s, 6s, and 5s spreading out at least across half the planet, displacing Australia, displacing Europe, displacing Alaska, displacing Hawaii. The only spot left to move is the East Pacific, South America, Central America, and North America in compensation. And it's taking longer than expected. For me, normally I look for a week. Here we are on day 7 into 8. Pretty much day 8. And I'm waiting. Creeping section's gone quiet. Let's go down to the south next to San Luis Obispo and see where we stopped. Why did we jump off the San Andreas, by the way? Look at this. We jumped off the San Andreas for some reason. San Andreas, we're coming down. We have a series of earthquakes up here at the Diablo Range. Remember, Mount Diablo. But then further to the south, we jump off and go over here. Why? San Luis Obispo Fault, but why? Well, looks like energy is trying to go down and around, but it's small. There may be something here. Let's put the coordinates in. Go see. Sometimes you just have to look, search. Whoops, that's the wrong coordinates. Sometimes you just have to look and search to see what's there. 0.8, it seems like it doesn't matter, right? Such a small quake. But if there's something there, then it's worth looking into. I found stuff before, guys. It's the only reason I'm taking the time to look now. You wouldn't believe what I've found in the past. Oh, man, you wouldn't believe. It's got me in big trouble before. Okay, here we are. So it looks like we do have a few things that I've marked from previous times. Previous earthquakes up here to the north. Previous earthquakes down to the south. What does Google Earth have right here? Wine country. Well, that seems pretty pleasant. Nothing weird to find there. That's good. I'll say it. That's good if there's nothing there. Oh, wait. What do we have here? This lake. Are they generating electricity from this lake? If they're generating electricity from this lake, then I'm going to start to get a little concerned. If they're not, it'll just be a weird coincidence, right? Let's go and see. Spillway. Is this just the reservoir? Looks like they're not generating electricity there. Whew. Starting to get a little worried. Anytime I see a big lake nearby, and we got the earthquakes at the other nearby electrical generation stations. So this is a wild goose chase on this one. There's nothing there of any significance nearby as far as I can see. No pumping operations, no electrical generation. And all we have is the San Luis Fault. So where is that coming from? Looks like it's trying to go around the creeping section of the San Andreas that's locked. And that would explain why there's no earthquakes coming out of it down to the south. That would also explain why there's nothing back up to the north. Meanwhile, it's going around the outside edge over at the California-Nevada border. Man, I hate it when it's like this. When we're right on the edge of it and nothing struck and people have been complacent in the past few months since they haven't been hit with anything big in the past few months on the West Coast. Next thing you know, a noteworthy earthquake hits. Your news anchors are diving underneath the desks for a 5.0 earthquake and everybody's freaking out. So I don't want to see that. What's down in North LA? La Crescenta, Montrose, California. My Californian viewers, you guys, I love you. I've got family out there too. So you guys are all good in my book. Let's go look up the location, see if there's anything here. Do I have all my place marks turned on? I sure do. Oh. Now, do you guys remember the fires that broke out in here? We had a series of huge fires that broke out just this past year. Right through here. And this whole thing burned. I believe from over at this landfill, back all the way back over to the north by northeast. Right behind where the earthquake is now. And I mean right there. Is there anything else? These are Aurora washout stop points for landslides in case of big rains. Oh man, wow. Okay, so we're at the fire location for that quake. Not that it matters to most people, but I have to keep track of these. We get big fires that break out on the faults. The faults connect between, and we saw hot spots, you guys remember, before those fires broke out. Finally, Southern California. Well, it sits somewhat quiet in comparison to where we were expecting, just like the rest of the state, with the flow not fully coming in and the slow slip still taking place in the northwest. Remember, this thing's still vibrating up to the north. Down to the south, we're still waiting for the breaks to take place. None of that's happened yet. Southern California, far southern tip. We pinnacle out tip at the southern point of the Salton Sea. And if you don't know about the Salton Sea, let me quickly show it to you. We get right down here to the south tip of the body of water, but you'll see the Smithsonian has a volcano place mark there. And humans are aware of this as well as the Smithsonian. They're two separate entities, by the way. Little joke there. But no, seriously, here we are. We have geothermal pumping operations, drill points again. So that's just like where we started in Northern California, isn't it? Geothermal pumping operation up here at Clear Lake. Then we jump over, we're at a volcano. We jump up to the north, we're at a volcano. We go down to the south, we're at 3 sets of volcanoes. We go further to the south, we're at another set of volcanoes, which I didn't even show you, but you guys can go look up yourself. We dead ended in the Garlock Fault, where boom, 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 we have 3 explosions on the Garlock for some reason. Going over to the east, well, it's pretty obvious. We're in the middle of the nuke test sites, and down to the south, we're on the San Andreas. Over to the east, really quick, Utah moved, pumping operations. Texas moved, pumping operations. Oklahoma moved, pumping operations. South Texas moved, pumping operations. Do you need me to show you the pumping operations? Or can you go look them up all yourself? You can pull the coordinates. I would assume you guys know how to do this. It's so easy. You go to USGS, you pull the coordinates, and you can do one of 2 things. You can put them in on Google Earth, like I do, which means you need to download a copy of Google Earth or go to the Google website, use their Google Earth feature. The other option is just to go, I think, straight to your browser and paste it in. Paste and search. Yeah. Paste and search in your browser. Just put it up where you put www. Just put it in and hit search. And then click on the map and do a aerial view. Okay. Once you do an aerial view, zoom in. What you're going to find are shadows of oil wells right here. Tanks, pumps, jacks, pipelines. You see how many there are just right here. All these tanks. That's just one little set. They're all the way around town. Here's again the location we just looked up. Right next to the Pecos Municipal Airport. And quite literally on the airport property, or at least right across the street from it, is an oil well. Right there. And we could even possibly do a street side view on this. No. Nobody's driven out there to get us a good street side view. Oh, what a shame. Okay. So that's where our earthquakes are down in, again, Texas. But you guys are welcome to go look through the rest. You can go all the way across the Midwest and look them all up. They're all drill points on the edge of the craton. We're waiting for the East Coast to move again, but when I say again, they already got hit. There's only one more spot for them to get hit. Let me show you the earthquakes that have struck over the last 7 days across the whole plate. This is amazing. For new people, you're going to be mind blown. For professionals, you're going to be mind blown. There's a progression of quakes that goes from the West Coast to the East Coast in the course of a week, and it follows the craton interior. Let me show it to you with the rings. We're going to turn off the magnitudes. Just remember, the rings indicate the size of the earthquake. So we're looking at 2s and 3s on the West Coast, and then 2s and 1s going across the rest of the plate. Now it looks like a jumbled mess on the West Coast. So let me turn it down just a little bit. So coming out of the Northwest, this is the indisputable part of the edge of the craton that you should be able to see. Even just the untrained eye should be able to see it. That there's a line that comes down out of Montana and goes down into Yellowstone. Then there's another line that goes across Utah and goes over to Colorado, where you don't see any earthquakes right now in Colorado, but they regularly happen at the Colorado-New Mexico border. And then going down through Texas, across through Oklahoma, back through the New Madrid seismic zone in Missouri, and then up the East Coast. And the up the East Coast part is the other telltale part on this. So the bend in Texas gives it away, the up the East Coast part, and over on the West Coast, going, or at least in the western states, going across Montana. Now look at the earthquakes coming out of Montana and Idaho, and they point like an arrow down in the direction that my arrow points. And that's why we have an arrow there, by the way. I noticed this in the past. This forms like an arrow point that points in the direction of where it's going, and it pinnacles out in the middle of Yellowstone. Are you surprised? The same thing's going on in Utah. It points like an arrow, and we have our arrow right in South Utah, going in the same direction we expect the push to go across. It all pinnacles on the edge of the craton and then goes over to the East Coast. But professionals said none of this could happen. I tried showing it to a geophysics medal winner. He mocked me. Straight up mocked me to my face, accused me of all kinds of bad stuff, tried to even get my fundraisers shut down. He was a top medal winner. All right, anyway, it's happened every day now for weeks and months and years on end. For the last 10 years I've been watching. And that gets me back to the start of this update, which is all of these arrows are on the map come from observation, which way we see the earthquakes go over the course of a short period of time, in the course of a week, 7 to 10 days. And this is held true again this week. So we saw a big movement here. It is now spread at least noticeably over to here. And we would expect it to spread the other direction over to the east, South America. We would expect it to spread all the way over to Europe. And the arrows pointing in directions across Asia, for instance, and the earthquakes mimicking those arrows. The arrows have been on here for years, but this happens on a weekly basis almost. Certainly in Asia, every 2 weeks, we are dealing with a line of quakes mimicking the general trajectory that you see here. And the color coding shows us which one struck first versus which one struck second. So these two struck first, then this one struck. So we should see something strike out here in front of it, the combined total of everything coming across. And that plays out everywhere around the planet. So I was under, this whole past week, we were under a full magnitude under pretty much across the board. That's good, I guess. Bad for me, good for you. We'll wait and see what happens throughout the rest of this week end. So today is Friday. We have Friday, Saturday, Sunday still to go, or the rest of Friday, a few more hours. And then Saturday and Sunday. If we don't see the activity by Sunday, I really will start to raise my eyebrows at being completely wrong by a magnitude. But I'd rather be a magnitude off than have a roof on your head. So if I warn Europe for a 5.7, and a 5.6 and a 4.7 hit, and the 5.6 hits 500 miles off, and the 4.7 hits 300 miles off, That's a borderline miss for me, but it's a general regional location hit. I mean, it's, within a few hundred miles. And that's good for something that everybody said was impossible just a few years ago. So if you can get it down to a few 100-mile stretch, you know what? That's better than the weather. We're supposed to be dealing with 4 inches of rain here in Missouri right now, in St. Louis. Instead, I think we had, a half inch? They said 4 inches of rain. And they got on last night. There's the weatherman on last night. Well, it looks like Missouri's getting hit down south. And my wife and I are watching. I'm like, what happened to the 4 inches of rain here? I go, and then he on the TV is like, well, just like we warned Missouri. I'm like, wow. Imagine if I was like, well, just like I warned. I'm 500 miles off, 300 miles off, but just like I warned, They won't let me have that kind of wiggle room with earthquakes. Why do we allow it with the weather? Oh, man. So we're trying to get it down at least as good as the weather or better than. And right now we're kind of in between on that. And sooner or later, I think with enough study and enough people working on it and people that come along after me that are able to figure out things more than I have. Again, I'm just a high school graduate who got unlucky in finding. It's not exactly been lucky to find this stuff, guys. Oh my God, it's turned my life upside down. But, you guys, somebody's going to come along and they will be a book smart and maybe not as street smart. And they will do real well and refine it down to a fine point, just like meteorologists have done. You can't expect me to develop the final meteorological products like the North American model that they use for tracking hurricanes to expect Joe Schmo wind current guy from back in the 1800s to crank out that North American model that we use today that's been developed by teams of scientists and using satellites and all kinds of data that they didn't have back in the 1800s. So I'm kind of at the point that they were in the 1800s, which is you're discovering some new phenomenon or some new way to measure the phenomenon, and then from that, new observations, new refinements, and they'll be able to get it down to a fine point, a fine time, I think within a few years, once teams of professional eggheads get in on this. Until then, you guys have me and I've got you, and we're going to enjoy ourselves together. I got you, babe. Dun, 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 dun. Come on, sing it along with me, everybody. It's Friday night. Hey, let's go check chat. Whenever I miss something, my chatters over on Twitch, they let me know. And they've done a good job, the people on Twitch and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you're watching something pre-recorded. I record this live before my Twitch audience that usually has 400 or 500 people in there that are watching live on Twitch. And then we record this and then put it back for a premiere over on YouTube. And then you guys can share it all throughout the week from YouTube, which is a easily shareable platform. And when we're live, though, if I screw up or if I miss something, my chat room is on top of it. They always let me know. So it looks like we did all right in today's update. It looks like I didn't miss anywhere this time. And at least we covered the volcanoes and the tremors and everything else. Much loved, everybody. Either way, whether you're on Twitch or on YouTube, either way you're supporting my operation. And that's going to go down in the history books at some point in the future. Much love, everybody. Peace out.